Hi there everyone, thanks again for joining us with Vegg'n Gardening with me, Kate, where we talk about Zone B gardening from week to week. And yes, it is still really cold, even colder, and we're still going to talk about gardening. So this week I wanted to cover just general equipment that you might need for your garden that maybe you haven't thought about. So you just want to try and collect all of your equipment before you really do need it. So the first category is soil or growing media. This can include potting soil or just normal soil fill if you have a big garden bed. Also mulch or seeding mix, and of course compost. The main item with all those different soils is making sure you understand where you're getting them from. Sometimes soil can be contaminated. For instance, you don't want to get soil from maybe a buddy's construction site, something like that. And you can always do a test on the soil as well, but that's more involved. The next item is try and buy in bulk if you can. Some places you can buy a bag that is basically as big as a truck bed, or you can go to various garden centers or landscaping companies and they'll fill up your truck. So if you can borrow a truck or rent a truck, that is really helpful. You might also want to think about if you have to do any soil remediation, whether that's adding organic matter or maybe adding fungus. That's a whole thing now. But just make sure that you know that your soil is safe to use either for your plants or for yourself. Sometimes the soil can be contaminated with viruses that will affect your crops, and certainly you don't want there to be any chemicals or metals or anything like that in there. So the second category is tools. This mostly includes hand tools like trowels or shovels, wheelbarrows, even knee pads. And you just want to make sure that you have what you need, and if you already have them, that they're all cleaned up and sharpened and ready to go. But this can also include things like flats or seeding trays. In the spring, garden centers are crazy busy, so you want to beat that rush. You want to get what you need before they run out. And surprisingly, pots can get kind of expensive. So for all of these tools, I would urge you to look online for used material. I got most of my tools and pots used or for free very cheaply online through different social media pages in the area. The third category would be support or support structures. How tall does it have to be? You don't want to have to go buy something and find out that the plant actually grows 3 times larger than your little tomato cage. And then take a look at different kinds of support if you don't really know where to start. There is a numerous variety of types of trellises that you can create or buy. It can use anything from poles, nets, pallets, wood, plastic, the whole gambit. So take a look at what you might need for those. Fourth topic would be irrigation. If you're getting into automated irrigation, first off, make sure you have at least a hose and a watering wand. But if you're getting into automated irrigation, you want to take a look at drip line supplies or soaker hoses, timers, splitters, all that kind of stuff. And last topic would be your fertilizers, insecticides, fungicides. So I'm going to talk about what I use. For fertilizers in particularly, I get compost from a local garden center, but I also do have a compost pile here that I'm trying to start creating my own compost. They'll be a lot cheaper. For insecticides, I try to use as little as possible because if you use an insecticide, it'll usually kill any good bugs that will do the job for you. But if I really need it, I stick to soaps, all homemade recipes. And fungicides I will use for powdery mildew, also other homemade recipes. Generally, a healthy garden doesn't need insecticides or fungicides, so if you're seeing a huge need for it, try and reassess what you're doing with your garden. The one pesticide that I did rely heavily on was BT. which is a bacteria that kills certain caterpillars. I was particularly going after squash vine borer for my pumpkins. It's advised to use it sparingly because a lot of insects are starting to build up a resistance to it. So I really try and not use too many insecticides, pesticides, fungicides, certainly not herbicides. In the long run, it doesn't do anybody any good. I like liquid fertilizers a lot. If you're not using compost, it mixes really well, and they usually give you the ratios on the bottle. I use fish fertilizer, and for compost, I will add a layer of compost in the spring and in the middle of the season, or in the middle of the season and right before I close up the bed in the fall. So I would write down a list going through those 5 topics of everything that you might need. And there are plenty of cheap outlets out there for these materials. You just have to spend more time looking for them and getting them. But the past few years, supplies for all things gardening has been a little constrained, so just try and get ahead of the game there. But to summarize again, the 5 categories of tools are your soil and or growing media, your tools, basic hand tools, any kind of support structure you might need, any irrigation supplies, and fertilizers or insecticides, pesticides. Using sparingly. Next week, we will get into seeding. I'll probably start off seeding some of the greens, like lettuce and spinach. Not sure if there will be too much more to seed, but we will get started next week. If you have any questions about supplies or where to find them or what to use, let me know. But we'll see you next week. Thanks again.